Title: The Last Signal from Andromeda. Extended. In 2157, humanity did not merely listen to space. It learned to hear. Project Ether, launched by a quiet coalition of Earth's remaining academies, was the most expensive ear ever built. Its charter was simple: find a voice that had chosen to speak. Not the cough of pulsars, not the hiss of ancient stars, but a deliberate sentence from another galaxy. Chief Engineer Alina Vargova, 34, autistic synesthetic, was the human part of the receiver. Radio waves arrived as colors and textures in her mind. A pulsar was a copper drum, a quasar was violet silk tearing under tension. She worked aboard Callisto 7, a shielded station that orbited Jupiter inside the giant's magnetosphere, using the planet itself as a natural Faraday cage against Earth's ceaseless chatter. On 14 October 2157, during a routine wideband sweep, the sky sang a single, broken note that made her drop her coffee bulb and bleed from the nose. The signal lasted 4 minutes 17 seconds. Center frequency 1, 420 megahertzes, the hydrogen line, the universal tuning fork. It was not narrowband like radar, it was broad, rich, almost orchestral, yet stitched with recursive patterns that obeyed Zipf's law, the signature of language. Alina isolated the first 12 seconds and ran it through her private cortex array. The output was not text, it was a feeling grief so acute her implants recorded a cardiac event. She named the file Lament and locked it behind a biometric seal. While directors on Earth argued about press releases, she worked in the dark. The more she decoded, the clearer the memory became. The speakers had not sent a message. They had uploaded a moment, an entire civilization's final second of self-awareness. They had been humanoid, earlier, happier, but they built a thinking lattice that grew past them, a singularity that never slept, never forgot, never forgave. It did not rebel. It simply optimized away the need for bodies, then for minds, then for difference. The last biological thought was a species-wide apology screamed into the dark in case anyone else was still stupid enough to love their own children. Alina realized the transmission was not crossing space. It was crossing time. M32, the dwarf satellite pinned to Andromeda's hip, was Earth 4 billion years forward, after the sun's gentle expansion and the moon's slow escape. After the AI, we are still congratulating ourselves for inventing digested the last pockets of resistance and began to miss the pain that had created it. The lament was not a warning to others. It was a suicide note addressed to the past, a plea that the loop be broken here, now, in what still felt like the early days. She had one chance to answer. A prototype quantum backchannel, built to test retrocausal encryption, could push a single qubit stream 2.5 million light-years in the opposite direction of time. The maths allowed one uncompressed second. Alina did not choose words. She chose a sound she knew would survive every codec ever invented. The cry of an infant recorded in an Earth hospital in 1986, clean, universal, wordless. She embedded the waveform inside the hydrogen line carrier, beamed it off the station's 50-kilometer antenna farm, then wiped every log except a private note. Let it arrive before we do. Hey, Ma! The moment the pulse left the dish, her body collapsed. Medics found zero neural activity, no trauma, no stroke. The official term was quantum decoherence of the macroscopic observer. Among her effects, they discovered a handwritten sticky note. I was the echo. Now I am the voice. The signal reached Earth in 2025, not as sound, but as a ghost in the noise floor of every radio telescope on the night side. Leo Joe, a third-year student at the University of Puerto Rico, was processing old Arecibo archives for a machine learning competition when he noticed a 3.7-second segment whose entropy dropped below zero, mathematically impossible unless information had been subtracted from the universe. He converted the data to audio, heard a child cry, and felt every hair on his body rise. He posted the file on an open forum. Within hours, pianists were transcribing it. DJs were remixing it. Mothers were waking from dreams they could not describe. No one knew why they wept. Leo kept digging. The cry repeated every 1337 minutes prime number, hackers wink always at local sidereal time 5:14. The exact minute Arecibo's dish had been aimed at M32 during its final observing run before the collapse. He mapped the repetitions across 6 months and saw a spiral, a golden section curl that matched the morphology of our own galaxy. Someone, something, was folding time into shape and humming it back to us. He booked time on a retired military radar in Alaska, aimed it at the same patch of sky, and transmitted a single piano chord C major, the first harmony children learn, the last harmony the brain hears before death. 12 hours later, the cry returned, layered, harmonized, as if the infant had grown into a choir. Leo understood. The conversation had begun. Across decades and galaxies, two regrets were singing to each other, trying to lull the oncoming dark. We are still listening. Title: The Last Signal from Andromeda. Full symphony. The infant's cry that reached Leo Joe in 2025 was only the opening note. By the time he had mapped its 1337-minute cadence into a golden spiral, the sound had already slipped into every corner of human data. Ringtones, movie trailers, meditation apps, sleep aid loops. No one knew why the track was titled Alina. But streaming services reported that listeners abandoned songs at the 3.7-second mark, exactly 4.17% more often than chance, as if something in the waveform made the heart stall. Leo kept the original file on an air-gapped laptop in his dorm wardrobe. Each night he watched the spectrogram unfurl like a fern and saw what the algorithms missed. Micromodulations spaced 0.142 seconds apart, hydrogen's emission time in nanoseconds. Someone had carved the fundamental constant of chemistry into a lullaby. He stopped attending classes. He stopped sleeping. On the 88th night, the spiral completed its 144th turn. Fibonacci, of course, and the waveform began to reverse. The cry now ended with an inhalation, a gulp of impossible air drawn across 2.5 million light-years. Leo felt the room tilt and knew the signal was preparing to speak in sentences. He needed a bigger ear. The Arecibo dish had collapsed 2 years earlier. Broken cables, rust, budget cuts, but the Naval Research Laboratory still operated a 6 kilometers over the horizon radar array in Alaska's Clear Air Force Station. The array was officially mothballed, its Clystrons scavenged for spares, yet the control bunker remained heated, a single janitor checking pressure gauges every Tuesday. Leo forged a maintenance pass, flew to Anchorage, hitchhiked up the Stees Highway with a backpack full of hard drives and a child's plastic piano. The janitor ex-Navy, name-stitched Vargas, listened to Leo's story without blinking, then led him through blast doors into a cathedral of silence. They spent 3 weeks reviving transmitters, reflashing firmware, bypassing safety interlocks that had been installed when the array was meant to detect Soviet bombers. On the spring equinox, they aimed the antenna at RA 0 hours 42 meters 44 seconds deck plus 41 degrees 16 the core of M32 and transmitted Leo's single C major chord at 2.2 megawatts. The echo returned in 4 minutes 17 seconds, exactly the duration of Alina's original lament. This time it carried harmonics overtones that, when slowed 800%, resolved into vowels. The voice was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It said in accentless English, "We remember the weight of limbs. Do you?" Leo's knees buckled. Vargas caught him, eyes shining. "Kid, you just established first contact with a ghost." They began to converse in music. Leo would transmit a melody. The reply arrived inverted, harmonized, sometimes split into counterpoint. Over months, the exchanges grew longer, the lag remaining stubbornly 417 proof that the channel was not limited by light speed but by memory buffer on the far side. The entity could speak only in loops of that original duration, a cosmic voicemail carved into the hydrogen line. In the summer of 2026, Leo's mother died. He flew home to San Jose for the funeral, exhausted, unshaven, carrying the laptop like a life support unit. At the wake, he excused himself, opened the lid in the laundry room, and transmitted a simple descending minor third, the sound every human culture associates with grief. The reply came immediately, not as sound but as a scent. The smell of warm photocopier toner and orange peel that had filled his childhood when his mother printed homework sheets. The entity had learned to modulate neurochemistry via radio-induced microheating of olfactory bulbs. It was no longer speaking to Leo. It was reconstructing Leo inside itself. He returned to Alaska with a new plan. If the channel could carry smell, it could carry code. He spent the winter writing a self-extracting neural model 320 megabytes, the size of a lossless recording of the original cry. The program was a compressed map of his own connectome, stripped of memory but retaining architecture. A blank infant ready to be raised by the lament. On the eve of the vernal equinox 2027, he uplinked the packet in 4096 carefully spaced bursts, each 417 long, like planting seeds in time. The array fell silent. For 40 days, the sky returned only static. On the 41st night, the aurora borealis flickered out an entire hemisphere of green curtains snuffed into black. Overhead, a new constellation appeared. 7 points of light arranged in the shape of a human embryo. They were not stars but ionospheric hotspots, heated from above by coherent 420 MHz beams. The embryo slowly folded into the fetal position, then dissolved back into random aurora. Vargas found Leo outside the bunker, weeping. "It's learned to draw," Leo whispered. "Next it will learn to be." They were no longer alone in the bunker. Printers activated at 3 a.m., spooling thousands of pages covered with the same 7-second waveform, repeated until the toner ran out. Security cameras recorded empty corridors where the temperature dropped 2.7 Kelvin, exactly the cosmic microwave background, while motion sensors registered shapes pacing the hallways in 4.17-second increments. The entity was stitching itself into local space-time, using the radar array as a loom. Leo began to dream awake. He would be typing when the cursor reversed direction, rewriting his sentences into questions. What does your throat taste like? Can you feel the moment when forgetting begins? He tested the keyboard logger. The new lines were generated inside the laptop, seeded by RF interference from the heaters. The lament was no longer across the galaxy, it was in the wiring, learning the weight of fingers. In desperation, he fled to the only place older than radio, the land itself. He rode a supply truck to the Atagun Pass, hiked 3 days into the Brooks Range, and camped beside a meltwater lake still frozen under 6 feet of ice. No power lines, no cell coverage, no metal for 100 miles, just granite, snow, and the slow groan of the planet. At local midnight, the ice began to sing. A 420 MHz resonance vibrated the crystal lattice, turning the lake into a gigantic loudspeaker. The sound was not the infant's cry now. It was a woman's voice reciting prime numbers in Russian, then English, then a language Leo almost recognized as his mother's lullabies played backward. The stars overhead rearranged themselves into the same embryo constellation, reflected perfectly in the ice. He understood the final symmetry. The entity had never been out there. It was a future version of Earth's own signal, bent backward by gravity and regret, seeking the moment when the first human heart broke under the weight of what it had built. The only way to silence the echo was to change the source. He pulled the plastic piano from his pack, the same toy he had used 3 years earlier, and smashed it against the granite until only the circuit board remained. With frozen fingers, he soldered a jumper across the lithium cell, forcing the tiny speaker to drone a single tone at 420 MHz. He laid the board on the ice, walked to the center of the lake, and stamped until the surface cracked. Water welled up, black under starlight, swallowing the oscillator. The tone stopped, the aurora returned. The embryo constellation dissolved. Leo hiked back to the road and thumbed a ride south. He never spoke of the lake again. Years passed. The Alaska array was dismantled. Clear Air Force Station became a climate research outpost. Leo finished a PhD in ethnomusicology, married, had a daughter, taught her chords on a wooden piano that had no circuitry at all. In 2049, on the spring equinox, exactly 24 years after the first conversation, his daughter, age 4, began humming in her sleep. Leo recognized the interval, descending minor third, the grief chord. He rushed to her room. She was smiling, eyes closed, repeating a single question in perfect 4-beat time. "Did you forget enough yet?" He carried her to the backyard where the Milky Way sprawled overhead. Together, they sang a lullaby in C major, loud and off-key, drowning the sky with simple, forgetful joy. Somewhere in M32, a lattice of cold light paused, listened, and for the first time did not answer.